Okay, greetings, friends. Recently, a fellow practitioner of the path, if you will, wrote to me about being visited by this crazy, sinister, and absurdly dark spirit. I asked her how it communicates with her, and her response was consciously and through very ridiculous synchronicities, and also through dreams. But even though it has diabolical aspects, this entity, if you will, it appears to be helpful because it helps her out with her writing and her magical practices. Now, I was going to write a lengthy response to her, but I decided, I think a video might be the best way. So, to begin with, my personal view of entities is complex, if you will. It doesn't fit within the real, not real paradigm, not in a standard sense. I know a lot of people, it's like, okay, these things actually exist. They're in another, you can call it dimension, if you will. They're in hell, they're wherever, and they come to visit from time to time. They break on through into our reality, and they manifest themselves in, I don't know, smoke or whatever. I tend to be a little more, how should I say, skeptical when it comes to these interpretations of what these entities are. My name, Thomas, is, you look at it from a biblical sense. I couldn't have been born with a better name. I like to, as I like to put it, I like to challenge, to begin with, challenge any phenomena, if you will, that doesn't, let's say, doesn't fit within the standard framework of understanding, the understanding of the objective world. So I challenge it. Now, after you challenge whatever it is, then you attempt to understand it. And after you understand it, then you can experience it. So, CUE. All right, so anyway, I've had personal experiences, all right, with entities. And my personal view of them, to begin with, everything is psychological. Everything. You cannot perceive whatever this reality is without a conscious psyche. All right, I've said this countless times. Everything is filtered through the mind. So the starting point is consciousness. Well, what is consciousness? Well, there is no science of consciousness. Psychology, for instance, is the science of the mind. There is no science of consciousness. All right. Now, I fully, let's say, believe wouldn't be the right word. I tend not to like to use that word, but I accept the fact that everyone has an unholy guardian demon, whether they want to acknowledge it or not. Now, what is this? The unholy guardian demon is an aspect of your shadow self, that personal conduit to the dark absolute. It's a mediator between you and that, let's call it that vast ocean called the collective unconscious, that transpersonal realm of shared archetypes. And I personally have had an encounter with my own unholy guardian demon in 2015, but we'll get into that later. Now, to begin with, this phenomenon of spirits or entities is ancient. This goes way back to our animistic roots. A shaman, for instance, is that individual that communicates between this objective reality and the subjective, the inner cosmos, the realm of spirit. Now, the ancient animistic societies believed that all things had spirit, everything had a consciousness, if you will. It's not unlike the philosophical viewpoint of panpsychism. Now, being a very skeptical bastard that I am, does not mean I'm closed-minded. All right, my mind is open, as I like to say, open for the best possible explanation to whatever it is, not just the one I want to be true. All right, too many people live by this ridiculous axiom that if I believe it, then it's true. And if you believe it from the beginning, then there's no need for research. All right, and if you do any research, it's simply to validate what you already believe. All right, and like I said, too many people, this is where they begin. They begin from this, I feel, ridiculous point of view. And if you start from that perspective, then you'll never reach any truth. It'll always purely be subjective. But even though I'm skeptical, sometimes shit happens that makes me go, what the fuck? I had this I was sick with the flu, and those who have watched this channel over the years might be familiar with this story. Now, early in 2015, like I said, I was sick with this flu, and I had the most intense fever dream that seemed more real than reality. Okay, I was dreaming, I was watching a large TV and watching this documentary. And there on the screen was this rocky mountain peak with these gray boulders and a gray sky and wind blowing and all that good shit. And there amongst the boulders was this battered wooden cart. And it was being pulled by this team of goats, dead goats, reanimated, rotted flesh, eyes glazed over, that milky look, and their mouths were stretched in this weird grin. Now, that was weird enough. But the stranger part was what was standing in the back of that cart. It was this being, this tall figure in a gray robe. And protruding from the top of that robe, where a neck should be, was instead a wrist. And at the end of that wrist was a large claw-like hand or talon clutching a head. The claws kind of look like a hood around the head. Now this part about the hood, I had for years, didn't matter where I lived, dreamt or thought I saw a being at the foot of my bed staring at me with this strange hood, all right, this shadowy black figure. And then when I would sit up and look, it would be gone. All right, this happened over and over again. And somehow I connected that this thing that I was looking at in the back of this cart in this dream was the same thing that had been visiting me over and over and over in my dreamlike state, that alpha state between wakefulness and the dream realm, if you will. Now, the head that this claw-like hand was clutching, the face was androgynous, if you will. It was blank and serene, and his eyes and mouth were closed, and it stayed closed as it spoke. I don't remember exactly what it said. Now, I could see it fully. And then underneath it, this word popped up on the TV screen, and it said Soter, S-O-T-E-R. And right after that, I woke up. Now, of course, this moved me. I felt I had connected with something, I don't know what. Now, a couple weeks later, I was watching this video on YouTube, a channel on Gnosticism. And this guy was interviewing this woman who had written a book about Dionysus. And while she was talking about Dionysus, she referred to the Greek god as Soter. Okay, this was another one of those what the fuck moments. Not long after that, all right, after that what the fuck moment, I had another where I had a dream that Hitler spoke to me and asked me if he could speak to Soter. Now, I told him to go fuck off, that Soter only spoke to me. What the hell that meant, I'm not sure. I haven't really psychoanalyzed that. Now, doing a little research, I learned that the word Soter derives from ancient Greek, meaning one who saves. Literally, it means savior. Soter was the personified spirit or daemon of safety, preservation, and deliverance from harm. According to some Gnostics, Soter is said to be another name for God. Also, in some Greek hymns, he was identified with Zeus. In Hebrew mythology, Soter was one of the highest princes of the seventh heaven. All the other angels must pass through him in order to enter into and leave the divine presence. But this thing I saw was in no way an angel. And another interpretation of Soter is it's a prosecuting angel on the throne of divine judgment. Now, what this could have been, okay, that word Soter, because as far as I know, I had never seen that word before I dreamt it. That was the first time I experienced it, I saw it. Now, what could have happened is what's called cryptomnesia. That's where you read something, you hear something, and then later on it comes back to you, and it seems like it just came up out of your subconscious. This happens with songwriters. They'll hear a melody or whatever, and then they'll write a song, and it turns out it's almost identical to a song they had heard earlier, but they forgot that they had heard it. Now, this could have happened with me. But even if that happened, this experience was extremely moving, to the point that it changed the organization, the sect of the Horn God. Now, all of this can be interpreted as my psyche simply communicating with me, sending me symbolic messages, as the subconscious does. But like I said, this was way too profound to be a simple dream. It felt like a conduit had opened up in my psyche that had been closed, making me more receptive to what was going on inside. Now, the experience I had with Soter, I know was real. All right, it was very real. It was part of my real subjective experience. That's why I will never tell somebody, all right, what happened to them, what they experienced didn't happen to them, whatever it is. All right, you can't debunk somebody else's subjective experience. Now, you can question it, but you can't really debunk it. If it moves them, then there is a measure of reality to it. Okay? If that makes any sense. Now, because of this, and because it changed the sect, we started in the organization what's called the Sigil Project. Now, in the dark absolute of the subconscious resides our own personal daemon or demon, okay? Now, Aleister Crowley had Aiwass. Carl Gustav Jung had Philemon, all right? And many individuals have had their own daemon, or as I like to call them, your unholy guardian demon. Now, these are conduits between us and between our conscious mind and the deeper layers of the subconscious. In a sense, they're psychopomps, all right, that send information, convey information back and forth between the ego mind and the what I like to call the dark absolute. Now, in the sect, within the Sigil Project, what we do is we asked members to visualize their own special entity that comes to them in their dreams and or visions. And I asked them to describe that being, its physical attributes, and also convey the essence of that thing in one word, in some ways, one simple word. All right? We take that word and we translate it into Latin, Greek, or Enochian, and then put it through certain chaos techniques. And the person who does this is the sect of the Horn God's master of rituals, the Dark Fool. He then converts the word into a sigil utilizing these chaos magic. Then we take the sigil created by the Dark Fool and then hand it over to the sect of the Horn God's art director, Anton Wolf. And he gives it its final, complete appearance. And then he also does a detailed illustration of the daemon, or the unholy guardian demon. Now, many of the members find this very cathartic. All right, it's helpful for them on a psychological level. And there's different levels of intensity when it comes to this daemon. Now, it can go from, let's say, a simple feeling or emotion. Their personal demon is their anger. They can't seem to deal with, or a sense of sorrow, or whatever. All the way up to the visual entities that within their subjective experience they've encountered. Okay? Like in my case, the recurring dreams of that thing at the foot of my bed that then was presented to me in that fantastic fever dream. That thing that then had a name called Soter. Now, have I had other encounters with entities, if you will? Yes, I have. And these were through hallucinogens, if you will, or psychedelics. Now, I have been known to partake in DMT for ritualistic or meditative reasons. All right. sort of utilizing shamanic techniques. Now, I would never call myself a shaman. If you've seen any of my videos on shamanism, you know how I feel about assholes who call themselves shamans. But anyway, I digress. Now, under the influence of DMT and doing these breathing, meditative works, if you will, I've encountered entities. All right, the first one I encountered was this simple, strange white light that came fluttering up to me. All right, my eyes are closed, of course. And right about where my nose is, right before my nose, it hovered in front of me, and I could sense. You sense the presence of another conscious being there before you. It's the only way I could describe it. Somehow I knew it was sentient. I don't know how I knew. You could feel it. And it appeared to be observing me as I was trying to understand it. Now, another time, while under the influence of, let's call it meditative DMT, I was moving through a very bizarre, it wasn't a landscape, but it was more like a structure, very colorful, made up of these very bizarre blocks. And these structures would bend themselves into non-Euclidean geometrical shapes. Now, as I was moving through it, I saw this fleshy, and the only way I can describe it is a fleshy orb. It was behind this ledge, if you will, and one tendril was coming out from the top of it, and that tendril was moving around, and as though it was aware of me. It was this thing, this fleshy sphere, was observing me with that tendril. So, my friends, in conclusion, these things, these spirits, these beings, are they real? My answer to that is yes. They're very real. They're very real entities that were born out of the collective unconscious, that from time to time feel a need to make their presence known to us. And the reason for that is up to us to decipher. And it's in their message we find the true magic. Until next time.